Somewhere right now, there is a parent sitting next to their phone, waiting for it to ring. It has been months, maybe years, and somewhere else, that same person's child is living a completely different life, peaceful, quiet, building something new, and they have not called either. From the outside, this looks like hate, like cruelty, like someone simply gave up on their own blood. But psychology tells us something completely different. What if walking away from your family had nothing to do with love running out and everything to do with finally running out of the strength to keep pretending? Because here is what nobody tells you about people who walk away from their families and never come back. They did not stop loving them, they stopped surviving them. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you changes how you see this from both sides. The invisible buildup. Let me ask you something. When you picture someone cutting off their family, what do you imagine? A huge blowout fight? Someone slamming a door? A single moment that broke everything? That is how movies show it. But here is what actually happens, and it looks nothing like that. There is no dramatic explosion, no single moment you can point to. Instead, it is quiet, it is slow, and it is invisible to everyone except the person living through it. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the leading researchers in trauma psychology, spent decades studying what prolonged emotional stress does to the human body. And what he found was this: the body registers danger long before the mind is willing to admit it. So, what does that actually look like in a real family? It looks like this. You are at Sunday dinner, and your dad makes a comment about your job. Not a fight, just a comment. Oh, you are still doing that? I thought you were going to do something with your life. And the table laughs it off. And you smile, and you say nothing, but something inside you quietly records it. It looks like your mom going through your phone while you are in the shower. And when you bring it up, she looks at you like you have lost your mind. I was just looking at your photos. Why are you always so dramatic? It looks like planning to visit home for Christmas and feeling your chest tighten 2 weeks before you even pack a bag. Not because anything specific happened, just because your body already knows what is coming. These are what psychologists call microtraumas, not the big visible wounds, the small ones, the ones that happen so regularly that they start to feel normal. One comment at dinner will not change you. But 10 years of comments at dinner, 10 years of boundaries crossed, 10 years of you are too sensitive and why do you always make everything about you? That changes the structure of how your nervous system responds to the people who are supposed to feel like home. And at some point, without even deciding to you, stop feeling safe around them. Not all at once, gradually. The way a phone battery drains, you do not notice it going from 100 to 80 or from 80 to 60. But somewhere around 10%, you suddenly realize there is almost nothing left. And here is where it gets important because the people watching from outside only see the phone die. They never saw the drain. Now, there's something else happening underneath all of this, something that was set in motion before you were old enough to even understand it. Because the moment you were born, your family had already decided who you were going to be. And that decision shaped almost everything that came after. The four family roles. In the 1960s, a psychiatrist named Murray Bowen spent years studying how families actually function. Not how they say they function, how they actually do. And what he found was unsettling. He discovered that in families where emotional pain goes unaddressed, the family unconsciously assigns each person a role. Not out loud, not as a conversation, but through years of small signals, through what gets praised and what gets punished, through who gets defended and who gets blamed. And those roles become the invisible script that everyone follows without ever reading it. There are four of them, and I want you to listen carefully because one of them might explain things you have spent years trying to understand about yourself. Role 1. The golden child. You know the feeling of walking into a room full of your family and immediately scanning everyone's faces to see if you are good enough today. That is the golden child. From the outside, they look like the lucky one, the favorite, the one everything goes right for. But the thing nobody sees is that their love is conditional. They learned very early, the moment they failed, the moment they got a B instead of an A, the moment they chose the wrong career, the warmth disappeared. So they spend their entire life performing, achieving, shrinking who they really are to fit the version of themselves their parents need to show the world. The golden child does not always walk away from the family. Sometimes they stay and lose themselves so completely that by the time they're 45, they do not know who they are without their parents' approval. Role 2, the scapegoat. Do you know the feeling of being the only person in the room who can see that something is wrong and everyone else acting like you are the problem for noticing? That is the scapegoat. Every family that carries unresolved pain needs somewhere to put it, someone to blame when things go wrong, someone to point to and say, the problem in this family is you. And the cruelest irony, the scapegoat is usually the healthiest one. They are the one willing to say what everyone else refuses to admit. They are the one who goes to therapy, the one who asks hard questions, the one who refuses to pretend, and for that they pay a price every single day. The scapegoat is the most likely to eventually walk away, not because they hate their family, but because staying means accepting a version of themselves that was never true. Role 3, the lost child. This one is the quietest and the easiest to miss because the lost child learned something very specific very early. The less space I take up, the safer I am. They do not ask for things, they do not make noise. They disappear into their room, into their headphones, into their own private world, and they become so good at not needing anything that the family forgets to check if they're okay. When the lost child grows up, they often struggle to ask for help even when they desperately need it, because somewhere deep down, they still believe that needing something makes them a burden. Role 4, the parentified child. This one breaks my heart the most to talk about. Imagine being 11 years old and your mom sits down next to you after dinner and starts telling you about everything that is wrong in her marriage, her loneliness, her resentment, her fear about money. And you sit there 11 years old and you listen and you comfort her and you carry it because that is what you learned. Love is. Love is fixing someone else's pain. Love is making yourself responsible for another person's feelings. Love is forgetting that you are still a child who needs taking care of too. The parentified child becomes the family's emotional backbone, the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who holds everyone together. And they do it for years, decades sometimes, until one day they cannot hold it anymore. Now, here's what matters: these roles are not chosen, they are assigned. Before you were old enough to disagree, and the moment you try to step out of that role, the moment you try to become a full human being instead of a family function, the system reacts. It pressures, it guilts, it calls you selfish. It says, you have changed as if changing was a crime. For many people, walking away is not leaving their family. It is resigning from a role that was slowly erasing them. But if the role was so painful, why did they not leave sooner? Why do people stay for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes their entire lives? That answer is harder than you think. And it is the part that most people on the outside will never understand unless someone explains it honestly, which is exactly what we are going to do right now. Why they stayed so long? Here's the question everyone on the outside asks: if it was so bad, why didn't they just leave? And I want to answer that as honestly as I can. Because it is not weakness, it is not stupidity, and it is not love conquering logic. It is something much more specific. And once you understand it, you will never ask that question the same way again. Dr. Patrick Carnes, who spent decades researching trauma and attachment, identified a pattern he called trauma bonding. And here is what it actually looks like in a family system. Toxic families are almost never toxic all the time. If they were leaving would be simple, the real problem is the inconsistency. Think about a smoke detector in your house. When it works correctly, it only goes off when there is actual danger. You hear it, you respond, you trust it. But imagine a smoke detector that goes off randomly. Sometimes when there is smoke, sometimes for no reason at all, sometimes not at all when something is actually burning. After a while, you stop trusting the alarm. You stop knowing what is real danger and what is a false signal. Your nervous system inside a toxic family works exactly like that faulty detector. Some days there is warmth. real warmth. Your dad shows up to your game. Your mom calls just to say she's proud of you. And for a moment you think, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it is not that bad. Maybe if I just try harder, this is the version of us that will stay. And then 3 days later, the alarm goes off again. For no reason you can predict, and you are back to walking on eggshells. This cycle, this pattern of hurt and warmth, tension and relief, keeps you locked in not because you are weak, but because your brain is doing exactly what it is designed to do. It is looking for the pattern. It is hoping the good version will eventually become permanent. And that hope, that specific, stubborn, painful hope, is the thing that keeps people in toxic family systems for years longer than anyone on the outside can understand. You are not staying because you enjoy it. You are staying because some part of you still believes the version of them you love is the real one, and the harmful version is the exception. Until the day you realize quietly, without drama, that you had it backwards the whole time. And that moment, that specific moment, is unlike anything psychology had prepared me to describe accurately, until I found the right way to explain it. And I want to tell you exactly what it looks like. The moment they knew, people always imagine this moment as an explosion, the final fight, the last straw, the door slamming. But the people who have actually lived through it almost never describe it that way. They describe it as quiet, like a light going out in a room you have been sitting in for so long you forgot the light was even on. It does not happen in screaming, it happens in silence. It might be a Tuesday afternoon. Nothing unusual is happening. You are sitting with your family, maybe at dinner, maybe watching TV, and someone says something, not even the worst thing they have ever said, maybe not even close. But this time, instead of your stomach twisting, instead of the familiar wave of hurt, you feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a flat, clear, quiet nothing. And somewhere in that nothing a thought forms. Very calm, very certain. I am done. Not I hate you. Not I want to hurt you. Just done. Like a door that has been open your entire life, gently, quietly closing on its own. Researchers who study emotional exhaustion, including the work of Christina Maslach at UC Berkeley, describe this state as a kind of internal shutdown. When a person has spent years managing fear, managing guilt, managing other people's emotions, the emotional system eventually protects itself by going quiet. It is not cruelty, it is not coldness, it is the mind's final act of self preservation. And here is what makes this moment so misunderstood. The family sees this quiet and calls it sudden. Everything was fine, and then one day they just changed. But the person who walked away knows the truth. Nothing was sudden. Everything had been building for years. The quiet at the end was not the beginning of the pain, it was the end of it. And what comes next for the person who walked away and for the family left behind is something that almost nobody prepares you for. And I think it is the most important part of this entire conversation because I want to talk about both sides of what happens after that door closes. What happens after they leave? Let me start with the person who walked away. Because the way people imagine their life after going no contact is almost never how it actually feels. Most people imagine relief, and the relief does come. That part is real. The tight shoulders every Sunday morning before the weekly phone call gone. The hours you spent mentally rehearsing conversations before family events gone. The constant low level hum of anxiety that you were so used to you forgot it was anxiety suddenly, finally, quiet. That part is real. But what nobody warns you about, what is almost never talked about, is the grief. And not grief like you might expect. Pauline Boss, a professor at the University of Minnesota, spent decades studying what she called ambiguous loss. She defined it as the grief that comes from losing someone who is still alive. There is no funeral, no casseroles on the doorstep, no card that says, I am so sorry for your loss. Because to the outside world, nobody died. But inside, you are grieving two things at exactly the same time. First, the relationship you had. Even if it was painful, it was yours. It was familiar. And familiar, even when it hurts, feels like home. Second, and this one is heavier, you are grieving the relationship you always hoped you would have. The version of your mom who would have understood you, the version of your dad who would have shown up, the family Thanksgiving that actually felt safe. You are mourning something that never existed, and somehow that grief is even harder to explain to people who have never felt it. You might be at Target buying dish soap on a Wednesday, and a song comes on one that used to play at Christmas, and out of nowhere, your eyes fill. And you cannot explain it to the person next to you in the checkout line. Because how do you explain that you are grieving people who are still alive and still choosing not to call? Now, I want to talk about the other side. The side almost no other video on this topic is willing to address. The parent, the sibling, the one left behind, because they are hurting too, and their pain is real. And it deserves to be spoken about honestly and without blame. If you are a parent whose child has walked away, I want you to hear this. The confusion you feel is real. You replay every memory you have looking for the moment you broke something. You reach out to other family members trying to understand what you missed. Some of you genuinely do not know what happened, and some of you, in the quiet of 2 a.m., have a feeling you cannot quite bring yourself to look at directly. A feeling that maybe not intentionally, not maliciously, something happened that you were not ready to acknowledge at the time. Both of those experiences are real. Both of them deserve compassion. And here is something I want to say to both sides. At the same time, the pain on each end of this silence is not a competition. The person who left is not the villain in your story, and the family left behind is not always the villain either. Most of the time, this is just what happens when pain goes unaddressed for long enough. It finds a way out. And now, for everyone watching, whether you walked away or you are still inside a situation that is slowly draining you, there is something critical I need to show you. Because the choice is not just stay or go completely. There is a full map in between, and most people never get to see it. The full spectrum. One of the biggest mistakes people make when thinking about family estrangement is this. They think there are only two options: stay and keep enduring it, or leave and never look back. But that is not how this actually works. Distance from a toxic family situation is not a light switch, it is a dial. And understanding the full range of that dial might be the most practically useful thing I can give you today. Level 1, guarded contact. You are still in regular contact, but you have made a quiet decision. Certain things about your life are no longer shared. Your therapy sessions, your relationship, your salary, your real feelings. You are present, but you have stopped giving them access to the parts of you that they have historically used to hurt you. This is not deception, this is protection. Level 2, low contact. You reduce how often you interact. Maybe phone calls go from weekly to once a month. Maybe visits go from every holiday to once a year. You are not disappearing. You are creating breathing room. Level 3, gray rock. This is a specific strategy where you make yourself as emotionally uninteresting as possible during interactions. Short answers, neutral tone, no emotional reactions that can be used against you. You are not engaging with the drama. You are becoming, for lack of a better word, boring. Not because you do not care, because you have learned that your emotional reactions are what fuel the cycle. Level 4, temporary no contact. You take a break, a defined period of no communication, not forever, but long enough for you to stabilize, to hear your own thoughts, to remember who you are without the noise. Some people do 3 months, some do a year. Some find that after that time, they return to contact with entirely new clarity about what they will and will not accept. Level 5, permanent no contact. And it is the one that gets all the attention, even though it represents only a portion of people who step back from their families. It is a decision made not in anger, but in clarity. When someone reaches permanent no contact, it is almost always after every other level has been tried. It is not a first resort. It is almost always a last one. Here is what matters. Whatever level is right for you is right for you. There is no moral hierarchy here, no award for the person who cuts off the most completely. No shame for the person who chooses guarded contact instead of full distance. Your nervous system, your history, your life gets to decide what is survivable. Not the internet, not your relatives, not even this video. But, and this is a question almost everyone in this situation quietly asks at some point, is permanent, ever really permanent? Can you ever actually go back? This is the question I have saved for last, and I want to answer it honestly. Can you ever go back? Here's the honest answer. Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. And the difference is not about how much time has passed. It is not about how many apologies have been made. It is about something much more specific. Psychologist Harriet Lerner, who has spent decades studying family relationships, describes a distinction that I think about often. She separates a genuine apology from what she calls an apology that asks for something. A genuine apology sounds like, I understand what I did. I understand how it affected you. I am not asking you to forgive me right now. I am just telling you the truth. I was wrong. An apology that asks for something sounds like, I am sorry you felt that way, but you have to understand that I was doing my best. And I think it is time to put this behind us and come back to the family. One of those is accountability. The other is a request for closure at the expense of your experience. So, what does returning safely look like? It looks like being able to spend time with this person without your nervous system going into emergency mode. It looks like being able to say how you feel and having that received without it being weaponized. It looks like the pattern actually being different, not promised to be different, actually different, consistently, over time. And what about the hard situations? What if your parent is sick? What if someone is dying? What if there is a funeral you feel you should attend, but you are no contact? This is deeply personal, and I want to say this carefully. You are allowed to attend a family event and still maintain your boundaries. Showing up at a hospital or a funeral does not mean the estrangement is over. It means you are a person who can hold complexity. You can grieve someone, you can show up for them in a crisis, and still return to your distance afterward. These things can all be true at the same time. But here is the thing about going back that nobody says out loud. Whether you return or you do not, the work that needs to happen is the same. And that work happens inside you, not in the other person's apology, not at a family dinner, not in a conversation that finally goes the way you always hoped it would. It happens in you, and it starts with something much smaller than most people expect: rebuilding and chosen family. Here is what healing actually looks like in real life, not the version from the Instagram post. The real version, it starts with something awkward. Because when you've spent years, maybe your entire life, defining yourself in relation to your family, who are you without them? This question is uncomfortable, and most people rush past it towards something that looks like healing without actually sitting in it. But sitting in it is exactly where the work is. Psychologist Diana Fosha, who studies emotional healing and transformation, found that real recovery begins not when the pain stops, but when a person can finally be curious about themselves without fear. What do I actually like? Not what was I taught to like. What do I actually feel? Not what am I supposed to feel? What kind of people actually make me feel safe? These questions sound simple, but for people who grew up in families where their feelings were dismissed or weaponized, these questions are revolutionary. Here's what this looks like practically. It might look like canceling plans on a Sunday, not because something came up, but because you realize you actually need rest. And for the first time, you let yourself have it without the guilt spiral after. It might look like telling a friend something true about how you feel and noticing that they did not use it against you, and sitting with how strange and good that feels. It might look like doing something you were never allowed to enjoy: a hobby, a class, a trip, just because you wanted to. None of this looks like a breakthrough moment. But these small daily choices, these tiny rebellions against the voice that told you your needs did not matter, these are what rebuilding actually looks like. And then, slowly, without planning for it, exactly something else starts to happen. People show up. a friend who calls just to check in, a coworker who notices when something is off, a partner who is patient with the parts of you that are still healing. This is what people mean when they talk about chosen family. Not a dramatic moment where you declare that these people are your real family now. Just a gradual gathering of people who choose you consistently without an agenda. And one day you look around at whoever is in your life and you realize the people who raised you gave you your beginning. But these people, the ones you chose and who chose you back, they are your life now. And that life built from your own decisions, your own values, your own definition of what love is supposed to feel like, that is not a consolation prize. For the family, you could not have. That is the thing itself. That is the life. Before I go, I want to say one more thing directly to you. Whether you are the person who walked away or the person sitting next to that phone, still waiting for it to ring, I want you to know something that does not get said enough. You are not a villain in this story, not the one who left, and not the one left behind. You are a person who is living through one of the hardest things a human being can experience, the loss of who a family was supposed to be. And that loss is real, whether you are the one who made the choice or the one who had it made for them. Both of those experiences deserve honesty. Both deserve understanding. Both deserve more than a simple answer, which is exactly why I made this video the way I did. Now I want to hear from you, not which role you played, not whether you agree with family estrangement. I want to know this. What was the one moment that changed everything for you? The moment you knew things were never going to be the same, or the moment you finally understood why someone you love went silent. Leave it below because someone else is watching this right now, sitting with something they cannot say out loud to anyone in their life. And your words, your real, honest, specific words, might be exactly the thing that helps them finally breathe. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.